across different countries in Southeast Asia to achieve scale, and further, I think that's more managerially complicated. Second aspect is exits. We do more buyouts than we do growth capital deals in Southeast Asia. Our thought process, I've been with the firm since we started it in 1989. I've been running the business the last 15 years. Our thought process is that there's stronger multinational interest and there's stronger prospects for exiting private equity deals in Southeast Asia if it's a controlled rather than a minority investment. That's partially driven by liquidity issues in the stock markets. Okay? We see fewer of those liquidity issues in China and South Korea, where both the domestic funds management industry and the international investment community have greater interest in acquiring minority shares in larger companies from private equity firms such as ourselves. So for me, when I look at Southeast Asia, those are the two larger challenges, if you will.
Doug, I think we from day one, as I said earlier, is a regional fund. So Southeast Asia has always been there. Indeed, in the 90s, we invested several hundred million dollars in the region. Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, for instance. What happened subsequently, one was the Asian financial crisis, 97-98. That has a tremendous impact on several countries in the ASEAN region. With that, we kind of shy away from some of the countries for a while. During that time also, countries, two major juggernauts, China and India, were actually developing very quickly. From a private equity investor perspective, we saw attractive opportunities in those two countries, and indeed invested in them quite a bit. Going forward, with all the developments and also, for instance, the valuation we have seen in India during the last few years, and the development in Southeast Asia itself in its own right, we think the ASEAN region relatively in our portfolio will be occupying quite important stake. And indeed, during the last few years, we have invested in the region. Again, we can perhaps this time speak to you more on what we have done. So it has always been there. It's not that it has disappeared from our geography.
I think just to add on to that, I think one of the reasons that ASEAN or Thailand in particular has relatively low PE involvement in the market is that I think there's a lack of fund managers in the country as well. Specifically in Thailand, for example, we know that as of today, there's only about 3 active fund managers, which is country focused in Thailand. And one major reason is that there's just not enough talent or people who are still interested in developing a PE practice in Thailand. I think that is changing. We are seeing that a number of younger generations stepping up into the PE space in Thailand at the moment. And the economy itself believes that it's able to cater, at least for local funds, at least 6 to 7 other players in the market besides the dominant player currently in the market. So we do see that dynamic is going to change in the next couple of years. And we hope that for Thailand in particular that the market will be a lot more active in the future.
I share the view of George largely, and I think the fact that you have a relatively limited private equity activity in any one of our markets is probably a function of the opportunity set. Like with any other market or activity, if the opportunity was large enough or attractive enough, you would expect more entrants to come in more quickly. A place like Thailand or Vietnam been around long enough. I think it's probably not one single answer to this, but I think it's something related to the diversity of the various environments. From an asset allocator standpoint, it is easier to build a private equity firm or an investment approach targeted at one particular environment. And like George has said, when China is, or any of the other markets you mentioned, are massive in size. There are, I don't know how many provinces in China, about the same size as Vietnam or bigger. And so at the same time, they do share a common legal infrastructure, a to understand only once, rather than having to deal with completely different environments of varying size and complexity. So from a regional manager's perspective, or maybe even an LP's perspective, I would understand that it is more logical to be putting money into one single market and supporting one team that claims to understand one very large market and can, I suppose, demonstrate their ability to be building a sustainable business for a very long time. In specific to Vietnam, if you look at, to the point of scalability, if you look at the average deal size, now I think if you want to invest in, let's say, a minimum of 10 deals over a 3 to 5 year time frame, and you focus on the fastest growing segment of companies, and you'll be deploying about $10 million or so per deal. That universe of companies, of well-managed companies, is relatively small. So I think, having said all that, we do see more activity. We have certainly seen more private equity funds being established over the last couple of years, and we see the very big boys visiting us more frequently. But the deal size they require is something around 30 to 50 million minimum, and those types of deals are not available at this point in time. So I think it will take a little longer until we see real scalability and the ability to deploy serious amounts of capital.
Okay, let's drill into some of the different individual countries in Southeast Asia, starting with Kunsupawat with Thailand, which my comment is, when we read the newspaper, Thailand seems very unstable politically, and yet the economy seems to grow throughout it all. And I would like to ask Kunsupawat, how does this affect your fundraising and your investment strategy?
I think in Thailand, the context in the country is very unique versus other countries. If you look at the history of Thailand, we have quite a number of coups and quite a number of changing governments. The average government for Thailand is about 2.5 years over the last 20 years. And despite that, the business community is somewhat detached from the political environment. A joke we had last year was when we had the big bank open up last year. The irony is that the stock market keeps going up. The number of days the riots was on the streets, the stock market keeps going up day by day, and that's just illustrated the detachment between the business community and the political arena. Also last year, with the big turmoil, I believe it was probably one of the largest export year for Thai operators in terms of exports to other countries. So the Thai business sector is pretty resilient to the political arena. And the good thing is that despite each government that comes in, they are pro-market, be it the current Thai party or the Democrat camp. They are all pro-market. So the regulation that they pass or the governance of the business sector is how to facilitate the growth of the economy. They still aim that the economic growth is an agenda that they're trying to drive. The other thing that we looked at is in terms of fundraising for Thailand in particular, it is difficult for some managers to start communicating this detachment between the political arena and the business arena. But that we understand that the investors sector themselves have also segments the investors pool. Some who have experience in Thailand who understand this subtle dynamics that's going on in the country, and they are quite open to the opportunities. What we've been hearing is that where have you guys been? Because most of the time those fundraising has to come from Thailand. The only fund I've heard from Thailand would be Lombard. No other funds in Thailand has actually ventured out to look to talk to funds of funds or family offices in other countries. So I think I go back to my previous point of the lack of fund managers locally actually has an impact on PE space in Thailand. I believe the current PE contribution to GDP is probably less than 0.2% of the country's GDP, which is relatively small compared to other similarly developed countries.
On that note, the two countries in ASEAN that have attracted the most fund managers and raised the most capital over the last 5 years have been Vietnam and Indonesia. I'd like to ask Thomas to comment on the relative attractiveness of these two markets, and then the other panelists have made additional observations.
Okay, thanks. That will be short, and I hope I don't upset anyone in Indonesia. Indonesia or from Indonesia. And I think I agree with you that inside of the Southeast Asian region, Indonesia and Vietnam have received the most attention. And my very uninformed observation is, or I would suspect that the interest in Indonesia is largely driven by the strength in various commodity markets, and Indonesia being an extremely resource-intensive and rich country. The rising commodity prices obviously then creating wealth in that country and having knock-on effects, positive knock-on effects, such as a very low unemployment rate in many parts of Indonesia today, and a very strong rise in disposable incomes in many parts of the country, which then leads to consumption growth. So I would think that's what interests people about Indonesia. Whether that's sustainable or not, given that my opinion, origin of all this is the rising commodity prices, which by nature obviously is a cyclical driver. I don't know. Vietnam is different. It's not a resource-driven economy so much as Indonesia, and the long-term success drivers, emphasis long-term, obviously dealing with a temporary blip on the macroeconomic front. The long-term drivers, also a very large population, which is very entrepreneurial, consumption-driven, with a very good work ethic. These themes have been presented many years over, remain in place. And I would think that from that perspective, Vietnam is actually in a very good position to continuously attract funds, assuming that we get certain macroeconomic issues handled.
You know, I'm aware of the audience, and it's easy to emit sweet talk about Vietnam and prospects and the like, but you know, my perspective is that over the years for us, I have an observation that the more difficult an investment environment is, the easier it is, the better it is for us, and the easier it is, the less likely that we're going to make attractive returns. I'll come to Vietnam and other countries and try to keep it short. But you know, we've really worked hard in doing more in India over the years, and we've been very active investors in China. I find that India has a very straightforward investment environment with good, disciplined local competitors, international competitors who understand the market and the like, and it's not so different from China in that respect. The very big difference is it's brutally difficult to get deals done in China. And we need to remember that in both countries and everywhere in private equity, companies are raising money for a reason, because they need to. It's not nice to have, they need to raise the money because there's a facility they need to build, there's a working capital requirement, there's some sort of expansion, or maybe it's a buyout opportunity. And because the regulatory hurdles are so high and the execution risks are so high in China, I feel there's every opportunity to make strong money. And let's not forget, there's three ways to make money in private equity. It's multiple arbitrage, it's EPS growth, and it's leverage. And you know, for all the best efforts in the world of strong due diligence, we can get one or two of those things wrong. And to have great multiple arbitrage, as you do in markets that are more difficult to invest in, is a tremendous saving grace. That's something that doesn't exist in India, I believe, for example, where it's a heavily intermediated market. The investment climate is very straightforward in terms of regulatory approvals. So that's an important point of differentiation, if you will, into more, well, larger, let's put it that way, more developed of the emerging economies that we invest in. You know, I think that Indonesia, for all the reasons that have been stated, have so many attractions, including strong middle management. But for all the constraints, it's not that difficult to invest in the country. And you know, we've been investing, my first investment in Indonesia was 90 or 91. And I found over the years we've made money at times and lost money at times. The multiple arbitrage hasn't been very compelling. Pricing is high. My instinct is that in Vietnam we've done very little. Our investing has been indirect through other companies that we have in Southeast Asia in Vietnam. My instinct is if, like China, there are regulatory hurdles to investing, that's a very good thing, because that means execution risk is higher. Don't forget the companies need the money. It's not nice to have, they need it. And as a result, there's every opportunity for private equity firms to have more leverage in negotiating attractive terms. Just would provide that possible context.
Perhaps I can also share with you our observations. I think with Kun Supervisor sitting next to me and Thomas further right, I wouldn't argue about Thailand and Vietnam. Perhaps I can add that I share George's observation of Indonesia. We invested more than 200 million in the 90s. I hope I'm not offending any Indonesians in the audience. Those investments actually, by the time we exited, lived through 5 presidents in the country. So it is a different kind of environment and different kind of climate and challenge. And that was the, if you like, the long past. What we are seeing since the current president came on board is quite a different environment. And if this continues, we are actually very enthusiastic about the country. Indeed, we are very active. You can't ignore the country with 250 million people, the rise of the middle class and so forth. So we do think that country holds a good potential, and having invested there, other than those political factors I mentioned, we are reasonably comfortable with the country. Another country that hasn't been touched on, this is the other extreme, country of 45 million people, is Singapore. We are also enthusiastic about that, but not so much perhaps in the domestic companies, but rather very much the hub of the regional companies. So there also we are active. Finally, I'm biased. I'm from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I think it's a very investable country at this point.
Thank you. So let's talk about investment strategy. Is growth capital or buyouts a more suitable strategy for Southeast Asia? And let's start with George for that, and then go to the panel.
Sorry. Excuse me, I just spoke a couple times. I guess my observation would be that clearly across Asia, one size doesn't fit all. And even in that context, when we look at specific geographies, investment preferences in terms of buyout and growth capital have varied over time. There have been waves of tremendous enthusiasm by investors for GPs in Asia to pursue buyout deals, because that was the LP's experience base in the US and the source of returns. And a lot of private equity capital has come from the US over the years, so that conditions expectations. There's been a remarkable shift in the last 3 to 5 years or so toward growth capital, despite the heavy inclination toward buyout deals in the late 1990s, early mid-2000s. I think in Southeast Asia, for us, I touched on it in the first response, we prefer buyout deals. The reason for that is that our perspective is almost wholly driven by what the exit will be. And our view is that multinationals are driven by a couple things again. One is either consolidating market share in the region or establishing an initial footprint. And as a result, it's a strategic decision. Usually when it's a strategic decision, valuations rise. Valuation is not the primary consideration. There's a longer-term time horizon. So with almost no exceptions for 10 years plus, and again, we've invested over $500 million, almost $550 million across different countries in Southeast Asia. It has been wholly a buyout orientation. So that's our preference.
Thanks, George. One side doesn't fit all, indeed. We are on the other end of the spectrum, if I may say. Of all the investments we have made, we have controlling positions in just 2 investments. The overwhelming majority of our investments were all minority stake. This is very much our strategy in the past and also going forward. I think it has some relevance because of the fund size and strategy, and also with that the opportunities we come across. Our experience has been in the space we are in, many businesses were developed by families, and typically families or promoters in these businesses do not want to relinquish control. And we, in our investment, very much focus on the growth space, and that is identify a good company, take a minority stake with a view of growing the business together with the promoters. So it is definitely not in the buyout space. I share George's comment on control and such issues. What we endeavor to do and achieve is upfront negotiate a set of minority rights, very clearly stated. This is very important for experience so that there are no surprises in the future what each party or each partners in the business can be comfortable with and look to. So it is negotiated upfront, those set of rights, and we have them. The other observation I will make is because of the space we are in, minority stake, and we coming to exit, the IPO route to us is quite favorable because with a minority stake, it's easier to achieve exit rather than a controlling stake. So with all those together, again, one side doesn't feel wrong. We're quite comfortable in the space we are in, and going forward, that would be our strategy too.
I think for Thailand, especially our fund, being a country focused fund, the space that we have dictates what we our strategy. Basically, we look at both buyouts and growth capital because of that's what the country offers in terms of opportunities. Especially the fund of our size, which is probably investing in a smaller ticket size. We see that a lot of Thai conglomerates today are being pressured by their shareholders to be more efficient in how they use the capital. And we are seeing a trend that they're divesting some of their non-core assets, particularly the smaller non-core assets. And that's where the opportunities we see quite a bit in recent years. The other sector that is strong in Thailand is what we call the lower middle market, which is like our previous speaker was talking about, the family businesses who are looking to grow the business, especially in Thailand context. Most of the companies were started in the late 70s, early 80s. And now we see a second generation shift where the son or the daughter is starting over the business. And they are the ones who are driving the growth in the future. We are seeing a trend that these group of people are interested in finding investors who are willing to not just bring money, but also to bring expertise from either the management expertise or market expertise to help them grow the business. In this particular case, like you mentioned earlier, family businesses are are reluctant to basically give up majority share. In which case, a minority stake is probably more preferable, and also it's easier for us to exit in that case. We always have to structure the deal properly in terms of the minority interest rights and the like. But for Thailand, we see both as balanced portfolio for the moment, at least for the fund of our size.
For us, we've played with the idea of trying to buy out for some time in the past. We have not found that to be a viable strategy in Vietnam at this point in time. We've seen some people try and fail. I'm not aware of any success stories in the buyout space. One of the return drivers that George mentioned, leverage, for instance, isn't available here. But I think the key reason is actually that the lack of depth of capable managers in Vietnam, senior managers who you could work with to execute a buyout strategy in cases where you might want to significantly supplement or even exchange, replace a whole team. That pool is just too small. It's not available in Vietnam. So to be pursuing a buyout strategy per se is something very difficult here in Vietnam. So we are entirely focused on growth at this point in time. But I do concur with George's view also that strategic exits tend to be then on the other hand, more viable exit strategy also here in Vietnam. Obviously, the IPO market is not an appropriate route here at all. And so what we do at Mekong is we organize, we've been organizing ourselves around creating the capacity inside of our firm to be structuring trade sales as our primary preferred route of exit. And part of what we do, similar to what Dr. Lim just said, certainly in our approach, we align around the end game with management right from the start. And it is clear that at a certain point in time, we will try and sell certain business to, in some cases, even select universe of potential buyers.
Okay, let's turn to the risks and challenges of investing in Southeast Asia. And we'll start with the one that every investor seems to ask about, is the legal systems, which are generally imperfect, with the exception perhaps of Singapore. So I'd like to ask the panel, what are the real risks of investing in terms of the legal framework, and how do you mitigate them? And are these perhaps overstated, or are these genuine, especially going back to the 1997 experience where we went through a whole bankruptcy cycle across Southeast Asia? Who'd like to start that?
Give it a go. Thanks. I'm tempted to go back to kind of the comment that I made earlier about the harder it is, the better it is, because underneath that is a reality that the more difficult the deal is to complete, the longer it takes to complete. So on balance, I believe that most deals that we work on take 6 to 12 months to complete, right? From the time we start working on them to funding them. And that, by far and away, is the most important de-risking element of the whole process. From a regulatory, personal ethics, legal compliance perspective. Okay, so just because you have 6 to 12 months and you get to know somebody doesn't mean that you get to know them that well. People put up the facade and they say what you want to hear very easily. We all have the rap down, you know? And I think the key factor there, it sounds so soft, and I apologize for that, but I just think it's critical. It's something I look for in our more junior colleagues, is just living in the target company's office, just living there, letting it wash over you, getting a feel, again, soft, for the culture of the organization. Do they communicate effectively with each other? Is the chief executive, if you will, too autocratic? Are there obvious gaps in the management? Is there a proclivity to hire non-family members, professional managers? So that's not directly tied to governance, but it is related to, is there a belief in the firm that they have every prospect of making tremendous money through that business rather than stealing from that business, okay? And that's what we wrestle with in the firm at times. When the going gets tough, and the going is tough right now, global macro, etc. Sometimes there's an opportunity to make more money by stealing money, putting it simply, from a business rather than doing the right things in that business. And this de-risking process before a deal is done, I haven't answered your question entirely, okay, is critical. And it really, I believe, focuses not only on legal and regulatory, I touched on regulatory a little bit, it's doing the right due diligence. Yes, it's hiring Bain & Company or BCG and KPMG and great law firms and tax advisors and background check individuals. We do that every time, okay? But it is just living the business for a period of time. And that's what I find my more successful colleagues do. My less successful colleagues believe more in the rows and columns. We're going to get a 38.2% IRR. We never get 38.2% IRR, what we projected. We've never once, across 150-something investments, have achieved the projected IRR on an investment, okay? So it is the soft issues that rule. Yeah, and then it's good industry macros, investing in the right company at the right price at the right time in the right industry. Sorry, wrong answer.
This was great for me. It's almost like you're running through my investment criteria. We have a very, very similar view. The legal environment is something you have to deal with. Getting around that, it's not perfect. It's far from perfect. In fact, we are happy to have a few very high-profile lawyers in the audience today who have spent many, many years trying to improve the situation. From my observation, there has been progress, but slow. It's not due to you, President. And there are definitely difficulties, and it's frustrating at times. Lack of clarity seems to be the biggest issue. It's not a lack of laws, it's a lack of clarity on the interpretation of those laws that makes our life. It's just something that is there, it's part of the infrastructure, something you deal with. And so, as a group, we spend probably a disproportionate amount of time trying to understand the corporate culture and the values that exist in the companies that we're investing in. Corporate culture and values are really a guideline for something that drives your behavior in the absence of a rule. And there is an absence of a rule in this country. And as a result, I think your best option really is to understand who are the people behind running this company. And we really go the extra mile there. I mean, we meet, before we make an investment, we would even go as far as meeting family members or the immediate community to the people at the very top of the organization, just to understand whether those people have integrity, who they're being as leaders of their organizations on a daily basis.
I think we're hearing a common theme here. I think most of us probably try to shy away from having to use the legal system by conducting a thorough due diligence before we invest. I think that's probably the better tool than the legal system that we have, at least in Southeast Asia. In our case, what we try to do is we go to the extent of, like you mentioned earlier, basically sending our team into the company to live there for at least a couple of months in the beginning to understand the culture of the company. And I think it's the management that really gives us more assurance in the legal system. If the management, we trusted the management and we do background checks, and not just on paper, but we really do family background checks. Like friends of friends who know the company, or friends of friends who know the family members. We try to get this informal information through those networks as well, so we understand the management. And that helps really manage the risk there. We try to avoid having to rely on the legal system eventually.
I very much share the views already expressed. I think if you look at Asia as a whole, back in the 90s, this was also a very often asked question, particularly in China, where the legal framework wasn't that well developed, and often it was the enforceability of the legal contracts and so forth. That has not prevented people from investing, I must say. But the challenge is there. On the legal process itself, to the extent doable, we have tried, for instance, perhaps invest through a offshore vehicle where rights are more clearly defined and enforceable if possible, or also at times, if agreeable, perhaps have certain parts of the contracts like the arbitration clause, for instance. The arbitration be carried out in a third country, Singapore, Hong Kong, or even Geneva. That I suppose at a micro level, we try to see whether we can be on more comfortable ground. But by and large, I think I want to echo the panel's views expressed earlier, and that is quite apart from this legal aspect. Private equity investing in this part of the world, I think, is also very much a people business. It really is not the black and white that dictates. When you have to fall back and draw on those black and whites, it is not a pretty scenario quite often anyway. And the people aspect will be even more crucial, I think. So just like my fellow panelists have expressed, we try to do whatever we could in the process, and ultimately really good times or bad times, I think the people aspect it's actually overwhelming.
So after the investment is made, what value addition strategies work best in Southeast Asia? And in particular, how do family businesses respond to general partners telling them how to run their business better? From Sukawa?
I think, especially in Thailand, for example, we're looking at, if you talk about family businesses, sometimes they're not just looking for money. I think for them the challenge is not just about getting enough capital, but also how to move to the next stage of the life cycle of the business. Because as you know, family members simply start from the father with maybe 2 shop houses, starting a trading company, and then evolve eventually to a conglomerate. But that evolution, as it grows, it grows organically, and they add on pieces to the business. And through that process, what we find is that there's some inefficiency built into the process. And for them, the challenges is not so much about getting enough capital, but also getting quality intellectual capital into the company through the investment that they receive. And that's what we've been hearing quite a lot from the investee companies. They're not just looking for money. They say we want strategic partners who are able to help us develop to the next stage, be it human resource management capabilities, be it market sourcing capabilities, or even operational improvement capabilities. So I think in that particular sense, as a GP or as a investor, we need to bring more to the table to these companies. Especially in Thailand, for example, where the capital market is not that difficult to access. I mean, banks are willing to lend to these companies more and more, but I think for them, just getting the money from banks itself is not sufficient for them to move on to the next stage. And the savvy companies who are looking to grow and who are looking to survive after the AEC happened, they are obviously looking for development in their corporate culture, development in their operation processes, reaching out to foreign markets further from what they already have today. And these are the things that as a GP we need to bring to the table to gather the capital to discuss with these companies.
Our approach has changed dramatically right in the middle of our corporate history. We started out telling our companies what to do. Open an office there, fill a position there, engage a Big Four auditor. We would even go and write people's job descriptions. So we would give advice. We were well-meaning, implement Six Sigma and lean manufacturing, and it was all well-intended. But at some point, we found that it would stick. Which led us to the conclusion that telling people what to do is generally a concept that doesn't work, because they don't own it. And no matter how smart you are and how much you know what's the right thing to do for a certain company, telling them what to do is just not working. At least not in this culture. So we've switched dramatically, and we created a framework over the last couple of years or so, which we call Vision-Driven Investment, VDI, which is a fairly simple framework, but it starts with, right at the outset of making an investment, with the mutual alignment around the long-term vision. Sounds simple, but it is a combination of statements or objectives, commitments that are being shared by all the key stakeholders in that organization, including a long-term valuation target. And it's basically the destination for that business, the end game, over a 5-year, in some cases 10-year time frame. Starting from there, we will go backwards and work out annual milestones, intra-year milestones, action plans, KPI plans, management reporting formats, everything necessary to be mapping out the company's progression from today until that minute. We call it the future, actually. A future different from what that company would be achieving on their own. So that's where the value creation comes in. When we go in, we see whether a management or an owner is willing to play a game bigger than they were initially planning to play by themselves. So it's that gap that we provide. And we're perfectly comfortable with the company not knowing how to achieve a particular result. In the year 2015, we accept that. We're more interested in the team being willing to play a big game and to not get stopped when an obstacle rises, and there will be one. several. So the bottom line is that it's very much consensus driven, and it is very much along a long-term plan, which we're all aligned around. And that plan is not just a tool, it is a context really inside of which decisions are being taken. So anything that comes up over the years of that plan really can be benchmarked against whether or not that is in line with fulfilling on that long-term objective or plan. And if a certain idea, opening a division in a non-core activity, for instance, doesn't fit inside of fulfilling on that long-term objective, we will quite quickly come to the agreement that it's not a good idea to do that. That's our approach.
Despite what has been said, we continue to try to help our company with Six Sigma KPIs and whatever. Our experience is the value add varies quite significantly from company to company, and the background of the promoters and the teams they have got in place. Maybe by way of a very small example, in the situation where our investee companies are not as sophisticated, and typically they would look to us, the financial investor, assisting them in the financial matters, fundraising, so on and so forth, and we have participated in roadshow, helping the company to raise that capital, so on and so forth. Those we can do in the IPO process. Very often they look to us to be active in that process. Also, quite often, if they're not sophisticated, to institutionalize the business, the introduction of corporate compliance governance, the introduction of independent directors, and so on and so forth, all those we did. In a situation where sometimes the management team is quite sophisticated, and we have one instance, for instance, just by way of example, sophisticated, but because of the difference in interest rate and foreign exchange rate, decided to borrow cheap money, different currency. But textbook-wise, we would know that there's no free lunch, and inherently, if things do go wrong, the exposure is horrendous. So while everything go well, like the carry trade, for instance, it is a very sensible strategy. But when we sat down and took them through, just in case, what if, then the exposure is very large. So that is the kind of instance where we can, at least through our past experience in the treasury and financial investment banking, for instance, bring to the attention of the company that well and good, take an open position, but beware of what you are exposed to potentially, what you are in for, in case things don't pan out your way. So we do try to help, but I share your view. Sometimes telling people what to do is not a very good way to go about things. But value add, I think these days in private equity investment is a key aspect of private equity.